All right. I'm here with Dr. James Gray, the Secretary of the Upper Cumberland Medical Society. Thank you for joining me this morning, Dr. Gray. I hope you're doing all right.
Yes, thank you, Ben.
Well, topic of discussion for today I want to talk about was the COVID vaccine. For people who are scared about taking COVID vaccines, what can you say to them to alleviate some fears?
You know, I have not seen any reliable source of information which should justify fear in taking the vaccine. And the vaccine rollout in the Upper Cumberland region demonstrates the vaccine's remarkable safety so far. That vaccine first came here on December the 18th, and there are 360,000 people in the Upper Cumberland region. So in the 24 days from December the 18th until January 11th, there have been 6,500 new cases of COVID and 117 deaths due to COVID in just those 3 weeks. And that amounts to a 1.8% rate of death from contracting the disease. In addition, and this may be more important, there were only 74 hospital admissions, so we got 117 deaths and 74 hospital admissions. And easy arithmetic, that means that 43 people must have died at home and did not make it to the hospital. And the hospitals are full. So the risk of death from any disease requiring intensive care in a hospital will continue to rise as long as the intensive beds remain at capacity. Now contrast that to the experience with the vaccine. In the last 24 days, from December the 18th to January 11th, the Upper Cumberland received and delivered more than 3,500 doses of vaccine without a single death. So using death as the endpoint, the vaccine has already proven itself in the Upper Cumberland to be infinitely safer than contracting the virus. And I have no answer for why anyone might have more fear of the vaccine than contracting the virus. It's just not rational. It's infinitely safer than contracting the virus. To give an example, I got the vaccine last week, and the only thing I noticed was some very mild tenderness at the injection site, which really did not show until the next day, about 24 hours. And by tenderness, I don't mean pain. I mean that there's only if I mashed on it was I aware of any discomfort. That's what tenderness means. It didn't really cause pain. Pain would be something that just hurts when you don't aggravate it. But if I didn't touch it, I wouldn't know that it caused any problem at all. It didn't limit my motion or function. And all the tenderness was gone in 48 hours. And the only reason I know there was some tenderness is because I participated in the CDC's V-Safe app, which to report the symptoms, and every day I got a reminder to check myself for tenderness. And I did check it, and there was tenderness on the first and second day. I recommend that everyone that receives the vaccine should participate in the program, because that's how we find out how many people get side effects, how many people don't, and what exactly the side effects are. But once again, I really don't know why anybody would be scared to take it. On the news now, some people have reported hypersensitivity reactions. Now, this type of reaction occurs when somebody is allergic to a component used in making the vaccine. That means that they have received that component before, and they have developed a hyperimmunity to it. And the most likely component is propylene glycol, which they're using to suspend the messenger RNA in the vaccine. And if someone has had a hypersensitivity reaction of any type in the past, they should get the vaccine in a hospital or a clinic setting. This is the same type of reaction people have to bee stings or peanuts. So you don't take peanuts off the shelf just because somebody has hypersensitivity reactions. But if they've had one, they probably have an EpiPen. And if they have had a reaction like that to anything and they have an EpiPen, they should bring it with them when they get the vaccine. They should not be showing up at a mass clinic. If they don't have a previous history of a hypersensitive reaction in the past to anything else, they could safely receive the vaccine in a mass clinic. They don't really need to worry. They would be asked to wait 15 minutes after they receive the vaccine before leaving the clinic. And I'm not aware of any serious reactions so far in anyone that had not already had a history of a hypersensitivity reaction to a component of the vaccine in the past.
So, Dr. Gray, you mentioned no evidence to support fears. So, where do you think the fears come from?
Well, the fears are unfounded, period. Most likely they're propagated in social media without any evidence to back them up. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccines that we're using here are not live viruses and cannot cause disease on their own. They are made synthetically in the laboratory, and they do not involve tissue culture. So I really don't know any rational reason to fear these new vaccines. Now, the coronavirus vaccines are very different from any vaccine produced in the past. These messenger RNA vaccines are new. They're unique, and they represent a major medical breakthrough in vaccine production. And I'm going to get a little technical, but if you understand the technical aspects, then there's no reason to fear. They've been able to use advances in computers and chemistry to create a small segment of what's known as messenger RNA, which contains the blueprint for making those little spike protein things that stick out on the virus. That just that one component of the virus, not the whole virus, but just that little spike. And that's what the coronavirus uses to attach to cells. That's the way they enter the body's cell, through that spike protein. So then they found a way to encase that messenger RNA that has the blueprint into a tiny lipid particle. And when the vaccine is injected, the cells take up the particles and release that messenger RNA, not in the nucleus of the cell, but in the cytoplasm. And that's the part outside the nucleus where our DNA is. It's in the cytoplasm, and it's taken up by little mitochondria in the cell. Mitochondria are like bacteria that live within our cells, but they make proteins. And so the mitochondria in the cytoplasm reads that messenger RNA and just makes coronavirus spikes. They don't make coronavirus. They make coronavirus spikes. Then the body recognizes these spikes and makes it into antibodies. And so if the body encounters the coronavirus, the antibody will attach to the spike, and the virus can attach to the cell. It's like putting bubble gum in the keyhole, or over the key. So the virus has these spikes. It's like a key to get into the cell, and the antibodies basically block that, so that the virus can't put its key into the door, and it can't get into the body. So I don't know how in the world anybody would be afraid of taking something that is so simplistic and so free of risk.
What kind of process does a vaccine like this go through, Dr. Gray?
Well, all vaccines, before they can ever be tested in humans, they have to be tested in animals first. And that's just the first step. So only if the vaccine can prove that it could be used safely and effective in animals, then are they used in human trials. And so the vaccines being used now have passed the animal test, and they went on to the next phase of human trials, which is called the phase 1 trial. In the phase 1 trial, they use just a small group of healthy people. They want to be sure they get the healthiest people in the first phase because they don't want to have any other confounding factors. They don't want anybody with heart disease or anything else that might confuse the issue with the vaccines because they want a healthy population. So they get 100 healthy human volunteers, and they randomize them, and they give placebos, and they give the vaccine. And they were found to be both safe and effective. And so once they've done that, then they can move to the phase 2 trials. And in the phase 2 trials, the vaccines were tested in several thousand human volunteers. And in this case, they try to mix the volunteers to match the population of different of the country. So, in this country, we would have blacks and Hispanics and Caucasians and et cetera, and people with heart disease and people with diabetes, in other words, but only in the same sort of mix as you would expect in the normal population. And in these phase 2 trials, they were found to be not only safe, but they were found to be more than 90% effective in preventing disease, serious disease from the virus. And this is the major endpoint that they would need to follow. So the next step would be phase 3 trials. And phase 3 trials would require hundreds of thousands of volunteers and many months to complete all the studies, because it's to answer questions that can't be answered without a serious amount of time. Now, this virus was just unknown until just a year ago, and it really wasn't known in Upper Cumberland until March of last year, and the vaccine has only been known for just a few weeks. So obviously, there's not been time to get all of this data in over time. So in a phase 3 trial, you would want to verify that the vaccine is safe again, always, and that it's effective in preventing the symptoms of disease, but also it is to prove that the vaccine is effective in preventing the spread of disease. Well, that's kind of hard to prove right now because the disease is spreading so rapidly in the population, and we have so little vaccine out there. It would be very difficult to prove in any kind of phase 3 trial that the vaccine was preventing the spread of disease. How long would immunity last? How can we know how long immunity would last when we just now released the vaccine? So these questions will have to come later. And will the vaccine protect against mutants, or will other vaccines have to be developed? How do we know that until we've tested the vaccine in these phase 3 trials? So basically, we're in the phase 3 trials now. And so since we're in the middle of an epidemic and the vaccines have already been proven safe and effective in preventing the symptoms of death from the disease, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization. And this is because the vaccines have already been proven that the public health benefits far outweigh any risks. And there are many unanswered questions, but these questions will be answered in time as the vaccine is rolled out. And right now, there are many more people volunteering for the vaccine than there are that are objecting to it. So, in essence, those trials are going on now, but they're going on with the releasing the vaccine. Of course, we don't know the answers to the questions, what's going to happen a year from now, because the time has not yet passed. Does that help?
Absolutely, Dr. Gray. And the next thing I wanted to hear from you is, what do you say about the fear that this vaccine moved so quickly?
Well, Benjamin, those fears are unfounded based on the incredible response worldwide in the developing and testing the vaccines, and the science is sound. I think the fear is just because the people that fear it just haven't looked at the science. It's just amazing how much the world has come together to create these vaccines. It wasn't done by any one person. It was done by a worldwide effort.
And then, Dr. Gray, just to emphasize one more time, why are vaccines important?
History has repeatedly proven that vaccines have been and continue to be important for the collective health of humanity worldwide. I think the problem is, I think smallpox was eradicated in about 1980 or something like that. So we've got a huge population of people that just don't know anybody that had polio or know anybody who died from smallpox, and they don't recall this. But the fact is, we are where we are because of vaccines. So there's no way that I could argue that vaccines are not important. It's history has made that very clear. They are terribly important.
Dr. Gray, thank you so much for taking out the time this morning, educating us on the vaccine and telling us the importance. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or say before we get off?
Yes, I mentioned the trying to test the vaccine to see if it will slow the spread of the disease. The thing that will slow the spread of the disease right now is if everyone wore a mask in public, because it's the people without symptoms that are spreading the virus. So when you see somebody in a public place, in a store, not wearing a mask, we need to urge them, please put on the mask. They are the ones that are spreading the virus. It's not the people with a mask. So right now, all our health workers have been wearing masks, and they cannot socially distance. They have to encounter these people close up. So right now, the vaccine is going to them first because they have to encounter these people close up, and they are the ones that are hurt the most. But please, everybody, please wear a mask when you're in public. It will help protect you, but especially with this new mutants going around, they seem to be better spread by aerosol particles. But the thing is, they leave your mouth in small particles of moisture, which are absorbed by the mask. So everybody needs to be wearing a mask when they're in public to keep from spreading to somebody else. And I think that goes for the people that get the vaccine. We're going to be wearing masks for a while, but right now, this is going to take a long time for this vaccine. If it does reduce the spread from asymptomatic people, it's going to take a lot longer than it would take if everybody would just wear a mask in public.